So one of the most important insights I ever had into my social life, yet also probably one of the simplest, is that people do not care as much as you think they do. They simply do not care nearly as much about you as you think they do. I said that twice, so it sinks in double. But yeah, I always believed that I had no margin for error in conversations. I couldn't afford one single slip up, couldn't afford one mistake or awkward moment. Otherwise, my reputation was permanently going to be damaged. People, in the minds of other people, I am permanently this awkward person, this awkward freak who, why would we ever want him to hang around us? He's this kind of person. I believe that people would permanently see me that way if I made even a single mistake. And, imagine what that does for a person when you believe you don't have any room to make a mistake. Like, every conversation, every social situation turns into ultra high pressure. Like, it's almost like you're expected to act a certain way. You have to deliver this amazing performance to convince them that you are a person worthy of their time. That was what was going on in my headspace. And my reaction for that, I know other people have their own reactions. Like, sometimes it causes people to mess up their words, to start stuttering, or, maybe they have a more physical reaction. Maybe they start turning red. Maybe they start sweating. I don't know. But my reaction was to always become even more quiet. Now, if you've been watching this channel, you'll know that I'm someone with more introverted tendencies. But in these kinds of situations where it felt like there was an expectation on me to be more social, to be more, intelligent and charming and witty, all of this stuff, I would become even more quiet than I usually would act. And, I'd become painfully aware of the amount of time that had passed since I'd last said something. Like, it almost felt like I was on a deadline to contribute to the group conversation. Like, this could be something super casual, like group of friends just chilling, making jokes and stuff, but I'm sitting there like in silence, feeling the pressure. Like, I have to contribute to this, otherwise they're gonna think that I'm some kind of weirdo. Like, why am I even here if I'm not gonna say something? And of course, that will cause me to overthink my words even more. Like, I'm already a chronic overthinker when it comes to every area of my life. So I'm just overthinking every single sentence that I could potentially say, a joke to make at the right time. And what's even worse then is it's just the stakes. It feels like every conversation is life or death when you're in that kind of mode of thinking. And, you're even harder on yourself when you do make a mistake because you think it's all over. Like, getting into that mindset, I'd often just force myself to say something or force myself to make a joke, but it wouldn't fit in with the natural flow of the conversation, or it becomes obvious to the other person or the other group of people that I'm kind of forcing this particular joke, or I'm forcing involvement. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural. So when that doesn't get the reaction that I want, when my joke leaves the room in like a 2 or 3 second awkward silence, that's even more awkward. That's even more negative reinforcement of this toxic way of thinking. And this was a struggle for me for so long. Like, seriously, this fucked up my social life in more ways than I can even count. But I feel like life has some subtle and also not so subtle ways of reminding you that people just don't give a fuck about you. And I don't even mean that in a horrible way, like no one cares about you. people are just so deeply consumed by their own lives. Like, people are waging their own mental wars in their own mind. Like, everyone's got their shit. And I know this is like, I guess it's kind of a cliche thing to say, but people are not paying attention to you nearly as much as you think. And the best example I can give was from when I was at university, and this was seriously eye-opening for me. Like, I feel like this is actually one of my best stories, and I'm going to cover this properly in a video. But in our university in the UK, we have this thing called Freshers Week, and this is the first week of uni where it's just like one massive party. The classes haven't started yet. There's like events on every night. Everyone's just getting shit-faced, getting to know each other. It's honestly like you're living in social bliss. Like, it is amazing. It's an amazing time of your life. Everyone's super friendly and like wants to get to know each other. But the side effect of that is, everyone's a little bit more reckless. People are more willing to do stupid shit just to kind of impress everyone else. Like, I knew some dude who, on this first night, he jumped out of a window and fucking broke his ankle just because he wanted to put on a show for his new friends or whatever. But so there was this one dude who I heard about in another accommodation. And this dude, he double dropped 2 tabs of acid one day, just whilst he was bored or something, because that's what you do in Freshers Week. So he double dropped acid, and this guy just started tripping balls. He just started tripping balls out of his mind. The story goes that he hallucinated that his skin was on fire. His skin was on fire, and he's burning up. He's in loads of pain. And he looks outside, and he's able to make out that it's raining. I don't actually know if it was raining, but he decides to strip off all his clothes, runs outside in the accommodation, starts dancing around in the rain, trying to put out the imaginary fires. And to make things even worse, everyone is looking, bro. Like, everyone is looking out their bedroom windows from this accommodation. Some people are even started filming this guy. Like, I didn't see the video, but this was a big deal on campus at the time. Like, people knew who this guy was. There's video proof of this generational fuck up that he'd made. And, imagine being in that guy's position. Like, I wouldn't even want to leave the house after something like that. Like, I personally, if that was me, I would feel like I couldn't live that down. I'd feel like my life was over. What a thing to go through. But that wasn't the case for him. Because, like, probably about a month later, I'm at some flat party. It's absolutely rammed with people. And I see this guy. Like, I know what he looks like by this point. And he's just chilling with his friends. He's having a good time. He's surrounded by a group of people. Can see him laughing, having fun. And I guess what kind of caught me off guard was I thought that people would be, he'd be the type of person that friend groups are kind of sniggering and laughing when they see him come in the room because, this is the guy that got naked, who thought his skin was on fire. Thought people would be making a bigger deal of this guy being here. Like, that sounds kind of cruel. That sounds kind of unfair, but you know what people are like. People can be cruel and unfair. And I thought people would have more of a reaction to him being here, but it was like he perfectly blended in. Like, it was no big deal whatsoever what had happened a month earlier. Everyone was just at this party having a good time. He was still just as included as everyone else in the room. Again, it was as if the whole thing never happened. And I'm sure that people still do have a memory of that because that's a pretty, extraordinary event. I still consider that a pretty good story. But after a few years, it just becomes that guy at uni. Like, I can't even remember this guy's face, what he looks like. It's like it just kind of disappears into the past. And that is something fairly major. And people were able to forget that so easily. So I remember thinking at the time, like, why, if he can forget that, if everyone else can forget that so easily, then why am I so fixated on my own shortcomings in my social life, or the mistakes, my own perceived mistakes that I'm making in conversations, which are actually just the smallest things and are absolutely flying under everyone else's radar because they're dealing with their own shit. They don't give a fuck. And I looked into this a little bit more, and there is actually a scientific term or explanation for this way of thinking, and that is called the spotlight effect. Now, you can look this up, but the spotlight effect is, I've got this written down here, the definition. It is how much you overestimate however much everyone else is paying attention to you, to the mistakes you make, to your perceived flaws, and basically how much you incorrectly estimate that everyone else is negatively judging you for certain things. It's kind of obvious by the name. It's like spotlight. You think everyone is watching you. You think you're center stage. You think you're the main character, but not in a good way, when that's also the reality for everyone else. If not everyone can be the main character, like, everyone's the main character of their own life, but everyone's almost exclusively paying attention to themselves 95% of the time. And again, there was some really good studies that have gone into this thing, the spotlight effect. And I've talked about a couple of those in a few of my old videos, but I'll just give you the brief rundown. It basically, one of the findings was that after an hour, people actually forget 50% of the information attributed to a conversation. So not just the topic of the conversation, but also all the little details, like the other person's body language, all of their expressions, like all of this sensory information to do with this, like, particular social interaction or conversation or whatever. People literally forget 50% of that after an hour. And then after a week, after 24 hours, people have forgotten 70%. Then after a whole week, people have forgotten 90%. So imagine what you would actually remember a week later about a conversation that you were having with someone else, where, they might have messed up, or you might have noticed them stuttering over their words a little bit. Unless it was something like quite major, if it was only like a small error on their part, that's going to be forgotten like super quickly. You wouldn't remember that. You're only going to remember like 10% of the information from that conversation. And the odds are that their little mistake or awkward moment is not a part of that. So you have to apply that same thinking to all of your mistakes. You have to stop holding yourself to this perfect standard and realize that there is room for you to make a mistake, for you to just unashamedly be yourself. And again, what I preach on this channel is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and, putting yourself in a position where you can make mistakes, where you can be vulnerable. Like, I'm absolutely rinsing cold approaches now and just speaking to strangers nearly every week. And that's fucking challenging and embarrassing. And, it's a tough thing to do. And I'm inevitably going to make mistakes. But with this knowledge of the spotlight effect, I can go home after having a bad day or making a mistake and knowing that, well, for one, I'm probably never going to see these people again. But two, by tomorrow morning, it's almost entirely going to been forgotten. So just hold on to that knowledge, because it just makes life feel a lot less stressful. You can go into these social situations just with the aim of having fun and, just enjoying the moment. So that is all from me today, bro. I'll see you in the next one.